Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Before we dive in, let me ask, how deeply do you understand the connection between health, nature, and the universe's rhythms? What if TCM could offer profound insights into harmonizing these elements to restore true health? That's exactly what today's webinar will explore. My name is Myra Chen, and I'm your host and moderator for today's eLotus webinar. Here at eLotus, we have been hosting educational courses for over 30 years, and we are proud to be your trusted source for premium CEU content with over 200 speakers, 700 courses, and 3,000 hours of CE. We are honored to have Dr. Soul with us today. Dr. Soul is a physician whose background in both Oriental and Western medicine brings invaluable perspective. His deep understanding of Ba Gua, an ancient Eastern philosophy, and its practical applications in healthcare makes him an extraordinary educator. Ba Gua's methodology offers a unique way to comprehend the universe's formation, evolution, and progression, and its principles can be used to restore true health and harmony with nature and seasonal changes. In today's course, Introduction to Ba Gua, Foundations for Health and Harmony, you will discover the significance of Fu Xi Gua, Wen Wan Gua, the Yin-Yang relationship, and San Yao formation, as well as an introduction to the Yi Jing and its connection to Ba Gua. By the end of the course, you will have gained valuable tools to apply Ba Gua into your practice for a comprehensive health assessment and treatment. I will post a link in the chat room to the many other courses Dr. Soul also offers, including his previous classes on digestion, detoxification, circulation, and more. And before we begin, a quick reminder to set your chat from hosts and panelists to everyone so that everyone can be part of the conversation. If you have any questions during the webinar, please use the Q&A box. And lastly, the quiz. The quiz for CEUs will be available the next business day late afternoon for everyone with qualifying attendance. Now, let's get started and please join me in welcoming Dr. David Soul.
Okay, I want to thank Sam and Tina and also Myra and everybody for providing this amazing platform for us, and definitely every staff member at Evergreen. And today is an amazing day because it's 6/6 according to the Yang calendar. There are two calendars in Asia that we use. One is a Yin calendar, one is Yang calendar. And Yin, of course, as we know, is the moon. So it's based on the moon cycle. And it's more accurate from month to month if you follow the moon. And there's Yang cycle. Yang cycle has, of course, opposite of moon is the sun. And so today is 6/6 according to the Yang calendar. And 6/6, interestingly, has a meaning to it. So that six means smooth, a smooth flow. And so the 6/6 means 6/6 is the day of a smooth flow. So that's very significant, right? The day according to the Yang calendar. But a lot of people still use the Yin calendar in Asia, and which is the lunar calendar. And so the Yin Yang, how did that come about? This came out of nowhere. And how their creation, how did that come about? And thank you for the introduction. And so I've been in medicine pretty much since I was 18 and now pushing towards 60. I've been in medicine for a long time. And yes, I started in the Western medicine, and now I do pretty much exclusively, primarily, I shouldn't say exclusive. I still use a lot of knowledge from Western medicine, and I bridge the two. And so the component here is I'm going to share with you my experience. Do I know everything? I don't. I'm learning just like you. I'm a student of life. And that becomes my passion. My passion is life. Everything I do pertains to life. And life is amazing. And so in that life, I define life probably a little differently than a lot of people. LIFE, love in full emotion. And that becomes the ingredients of health. Without love, there's no healing. And becomes very mechanical. And so that's understand. And I'm fortunate to have that experience of both cultures, both languages, and also the both medicines. And for me, my experience in bridging the two is crucial in my practice. And we do see a lot of patients. And in seeing a lot of patients, I gain a lot of experiences. And in that experiences, that's why I'm here to share with you. But more importantly, or more profoundly, is to understand, well, where did Chinese medicine come from? And where did 5 elements, where did that come from? And to understand it, today is going to help you understand what all that means. And so you can truly apply it. So what would you like to learn? This is for the future. This does not necessarily pertain to today. And I think whatever you want to learn, go and type it in. Type in a number if you can pick 3. And now give us what you're interested in. And one of the things that I emphasize a lot is the energetic matrix. The energy is not a line. It's like a river. If you look at the map is a line. But when you go to the river, is it a line? It's not a line. Sometimes wider, sometimes narrower, sometimes deeper. And so it becomes a matrix. And sometimes the two rivers will merge together and then it will split off again. And so that coming together and leaving, all that is the matrix. And so that embryological development, I think is a crucial component for me to understand the flow of energy in the body. And so it's important to know the true matrix and not just understand it from the level of just a line. There's a depth to it. And river does change. River does not hold the water in the same place at the same time. Sometime if you go to an area where you had a lot of water at one time, you may not be there anymore. And so if you get in that water, you have to make sure that you are going to a place that you can find water. Otherwise, it's hollow, it's empty. And you'll experience that in the needle. There's nothing there. Even though, yes, you are absolutely correct according to point location, but there's no energy. And also to understand why there is an energy. And so to know the development from the embryological development from one cell into the meridians and how that correlates to anatomical development of the embryology. And so if you're interested in that, then we can type it in. And how to generate lifelong patients. We have tons of lifelong patients. And they trust us, and sometimes exclusively. They will go to their other primary care to get the labs and what have you. We can also order labs, but I don't for specific reasons. Okay. Is it clear? Is that better? If I speak up, some people say the audio is not clear.
No, it is clear.
It's clear? Okay, is that better? Okay, I'll speak up. I'll speak up a little more. And so embryological development, finishing that. If you want to learn more about it, type it in and we can decide what class we may have in the future. And also how to generate lifelong patients. We do see a lot of patients, sometimes up to over 130, 140 a day. But we do average around 100-ish a day. So we do see a lot of patients, and we do have a lot of lifelong patients, and develop that trust that true trust that you can have with the patient. And so that's something I think a lot of us want to have. And at the same time, you also want to know how to talk to patient and how to care for the patient. Remember, back in the ancient days, in the village, in China somewhere, the measurement of a good doctor, a good physician is based on how not busy they are, right? Interesting. And so I'm busy because I don't take care of village. We're in a big city. But we do have ongoing patients, and those patients, they tend to be a lot easier because they truly want the optimal health. And they have that deep desire of knowing what that health is. And so today, I think it would be a good idea for you to understand what that is, to bridge the two and to have that understanding of Chinese medicine, bridging the Western medicine. And number three, needling techniques. I think it's extremely crucial because if you miss the point, you miss the point. Remember, the body is three-dimensional, not two-dimensional. And are you able to get to where the water is, right? When we're talking about river as a reference, are you able to get to the place where there's chi? Because if you don't get the chi, you're not going to get the result. But when you hit the chi, you can get a result, and not only getting a result very effectively. I've treated patient with one needle, just one for the entire treatment. Do you need a lot of needles? No. It's based on how patients feel when they leave the clinic. And if you have a lot of needles and they're still in pain, did you achieve your objective? Probably not. But if all you're doing is one needle, to them, it's amazing. And the pain is gone. And so that's what you want to do. You want to use the least needles. We don't use a lot of needles. 3, 4, sometimes 1. Very rarely when we're doing things for the acute that we use a lot of needles, we don't. Only a few. And so if you want to learn about needling techniques or case-based learning, I think that's the best way to learn. Is learn from cases, the cases that works and why it works. Not just learning protocol. Yes, that's a good starting point, but actually learning about why. Why are you putting that point versus another point? And learning how to also make the diagnose from the diagnose all the way through in the process of diagnosing. And I'll be doing more of case-based learning. It won't be as long of classes, but it will be more concise to that topic. And I think digestive is a common one for most people, but it will be entirely based on cases. And then lumbar, so the low back pain and what to consider, and also pain diagnosis. How do you diagnose pain? Do you want to just be a Tylenol, just manage the pain? Or do you want to get to the root cause and actually provide healing for your patients? And so whatever you like to learn, go ahead and type 3 numbers. So today's learning objective. First, we want to learn about the purpose and formation of Ba Gua and flow. We hear Ba Gua all the time. Well, what is Ba Gua? Ba means 8, and Gua, what does that mean? And we'll learn that today. And how does that pertain to the flow? Is it just the flow of energy within the body? No, it's a flow of the entire universe. It's every single thing that happens in the universe pertains to that flow. And application of Ba Gua and the 5 element in Chinese Wu Xi. So that 5 element, how do you apply it? You kind of doing things, but do you really understand what you're doing? Why that point? And so instead of, again, protocol, a good starting point, but you want to truly understand. So when it works, if you do a protocol, when it works, it's great. But when it doesn't work, you're in trouble because at that point, you don't know what to do. So what I like you to do is learning based on understanding. And so I'm here to teach to learn and learn to understand. And once you understand it, you can teach again. And so it's important to understand that and develop that automatic paradoxical analysis. And we'll talk about what that means, the paradox. Everything occurs because of paradox. Otherwise, it's a separation. And also enhance the integrative understanding. Take what you're understanding and apply into your practice, and not just using protocols. And one thing I do not like to teach, I don't teach protocols. I teach understandings. And so when you understand, then you can vary from what the protocol is. And a lot of people are teaching protocols. And a lot of times, most people who are learning Chinese medicine and acupuncture, they're learning based on protocols rather than, and it's necessary. That's a starting point for all of us. But for those who want to go above the protocol and have a true understanding, that's why I'm here. And definitely improve your diagnostic skill. You cannot treat what you don't know. And a lot of people are symptom-based treatment, meaning they're treating the symptoms. Well, does that sound familiar? That's what Western medicine does, right? A lot of time they're focusing on the symptoms and they're not really looking at the root cause. A lot of issues, for example, any common one. So when you have diabetic paresthesia, the diabetic neuropathy, what's causing it? And a lot of time, Western medicine, we tend to think it's the nerve. No, the nerve is a messenger. Don't shoot the messenger. Don't shoot the messenger. The nerve is just telling you, okay, I can feel, or I'm feeling something unusual. The nerve is the result. It's not the cause. It's not the root. So you have to know what the root cause is. So for diabetic neuropathy, it's very common because why? Because you have a high glucose in the blood. So think of water versus syrup. Which one's gonna flow better? Of course, water. But when the viscosity starts to increase, does it flow well? No. And the further away, the more compromised, meaning you're gonna have less flow. So by the time you get down to that area, you don't have enough flow because the blood is so thick. That's the cause, not because of the nerve. If you just manage the nerve, manage the symptoms just by blocking it. Good example, when I was working in pain clinic, what do we like to do? Give injection, steroid. Okay, it's the best anti-inflammatory we know, but also it carries a lot of side effects. Well, you're temporarily controlling the symptoms by taking down the inflammation. You're not addressing the root cause. And one thing we're finding is when patient leaves, they feel like they are better. No, you're not. The problem's still there. You just don't feel it. And they think they're better. They start doing stuff. And once the pain comes back, it comes back worse because they're causing more damage, structural damage. And so it's understand the root cause and don't just manage the symptoms. And another component to me, it's amazing. The understanding of the East and West allows me to master my own life and bridge the two, bridge the East and the West. Because Ba Gua, the foundation of Ba Gua is everything to the flow. And that includes the Yi Jing, which it originated from the Yi Jing, and then the Wen Wan, and then also Confucius. Okay, so learning, the three levels of learning. Imitation is always the lowest level. That's the protocol, which is good. It's a good starting point. And you want to go above that. You want to start integrate the understandings. And if our profession are stuck in that at that level of imitation, I'll just give a good example. True mechanic versus a technician. When you take your car in nowadays, what do? They plug in an OBD port and it will give you a diagnosis and give you step by step on how to fix the car. And the technician just follows step by step on the screen, which is good. They can fix the car. However, if it's outside of that boundary of the OBD, what OBD can pick up, they don't know. And I remember my wife's grandfather. He's a true mechanic. He has a stethoscope for the car, for the engine. He would listen to the engine. He would listen to the sound to make a true diagnose because he understands the interwork of every component of the vehicle rather than just swapping parts out. But nowadays, most technicians, they're just swapping out parts. And do you want to have that? Of course not. One thing I'm finding for a lot of people in acupuncture, doing acupuncture, they follow one protocol to another. And before they know it, they really don't know which protocol to use. And if it works, great. So it's like try and error. And you're constantly in that mode of try and error for every patient. So there's no precision in the treatment. So what you want to have is to understand it and know, okay, this is going to work this time and why. And next time I'm going to do this instead of that. And this is my reasoning because you understand it. And that's what's going to make you a true healer. True healer. One time, and I remember a patient told me, and he said, and to me, it's a great honor. He said, "You're not a doctor. You're a healer." Because people's perception of doctor, they just manage symptoms. And for us, we're actually healing them to the point of true health, the optimal health. And to me, that's such an honor to be a healer. And that's what we are. We are a healer. We're not just there to manage symptoms. So if you're just using acupuncture to manage pain, are you a technician or are you a true physician, a true healer? And so that's something that you have to ask yourself. And I don't like to teach protocol. I want you to understand. And that's how I'm going to approach it. And for those who are asking me about protocols, I may not answer your question. I'll give you a guideline and we'll go from there. So learning, the two components of learning, Xue is more of a classic classroom learning. It's a knowledge, you're picking up knowledge. Xi is put into practice. And practice, does it make perfect? No, it creates proficiency. It creates proficiency. There's a reason why we're able to see so many patients with such a great result. Because through the adjustment and being put it into practice to truly understand what works and what doesn't work. And so over time, having that understanding and tied it back to the understanding from the classroom of what we learned in both Eastern medicine, Western medicine, anatomically, the pathology. So all the classes, even microbiology, even chemistry, organic chemistry, water biochemistry, all those components and be able to bring them together and understand it. Because do you want to understand it from the level that that'll get you to the point that was stuck, or do you want to understand the big picture? And that's the difference between the scientific method and the observational analysis or patterns. So in Chinese medicine and Chinese culture, or Chinese society, is based on observation. And observation is infinite, whereas scientific method is finite. Why is it finite? Because it negates itself. They will prove something and they'll disapprove it later. And that's the finite because they only see from one angle. They don't see the whole picture. And when you see it from one angle, that becomes finite. And yes, you can break it down to the smallest, but there's something else that's even smaller. And you just keep going until you have a better understanding. Is it necessary? Yes, it is necessary. My background is in science. My undergrad is biochemistry before medical school. And so that scientific method is important to have, to understand. And that coming up with any type of theories or any type of postulation, it's important to have that thinking. But more importantly, that thinking has to support the observation. Observation doesn't change. The pattern doesn't change. The sun will always come out the east side and goes down on the west side. Is that going to change? No. And that's how Ba Gua came about. And we'll go into detail of each Gua and what it means, the evolution of that Gua, and through different time in Chinese history. And so, yes, I want you to understand. So teach to understand, and understand to learn, and learn to teach. Or teach to learn, that's more appropriate, and learn to understand and understand to teach. So the mastery in anything is in the understanding. The mastery in anything is in the understanding, not in reciting the protocol. It is important, I'm going to emphasize that all of us start with the protocol. And that's a good starting point. But if you want to be better, you have to go to a level of understanding. And of course, the highest level of understanding is the innovation. Because you understand it, I'm not going to do that or that, but I'm going to combine the two. And I'll give you a reason why. Sometimes I'll do distal point and local points together, but not truly local points. Because when you're using distal points to control the pain of local points, and you have a needle there that's causing the pain, that's controlling that needle. But under what circumstances can you do that? And so having the understanding then you allows you to modify, you can call it protocol, but for me at that point, it's no longer protocol. It's based on understanding. I can feel exactly what I'm putting in that point, based on the flow of the energy, based on the diagnosis, based on the pathology, and also based on nature, what's around you. And is that important? Of course. Where do you think COVID is coming from, inside or outside? COVID is coming from outside. It's invasion that's coming from outside. And so having that mastery of the understanding is important, because that will allow you to get to a point that you just innovate. You no longer follow protocol. And that's the highest level of learning, from imitation, integration, and innovation. And yes, there's steps. There's steps. And I would love it if all of you can get to that level of innovation, to the highest level of mastery in the medicine. Okay, so the presentation outline, we'll talk about the purpose of Ba Gua, the Yi Jing, what it means, and the translation, or I don't like the translation. People call it the book of change. I don't agree with that term. I don't like to change. And my wife would say, I love you just the way you are, right? And your wife will tell you that. You go, well, and so what is change? And what does that mean? Is it truly mean change, or is there other meaning behind it? And we'll talk about it. And Tai Chi, what does that mean? Tai Chi creates the harmony. Some people use the term balance. Balance to me is two-dimensional. And harmony is three-dimensional. So how can you create a harmony within a three-dimension and not just a two-dimensional balance? And then also Ba Gua and what it means, and the two Guas, you have pre-heaven and post-heaven, Fu Xi and Wen Wan, and the evolution of that Gua, and how that becomes the five elements. Our understanding of that five elements derive from Ba Gua and from Hou Tian, or the post-heaven Gua. And so it's from the Wen Wan Gua. And so we'll talk about that and having that understanding how each Gua is formed. I want you to look at Gua, each Gua, and not have to memorize it. You know exactly what that Gua means, because you have to understand it and how that pertains to health, and how you can create a flow within that. And not just flow within you, but flow with the surrounding, whether it's geographical, whether it is the weather, whether it is the season, and having that understanding on how to apply it. And without many needles, we use very few needles. And we'll talk about that. Okay, so the purpose of Ba Gua is the creation. So in Eastern and Western, to understand, you have to understand. I'm going to draw some parallel of East and West, so you can understand. Because Western thinking is quite different than Eastern thinking. Western thinking tends to think in terms of absolute, in terms of right or wrong. In Chinese perspective or Asian perspective, we think in terms of relative. and not absolute. And there's a big difference between that absolute and also relative. I can tell you, I'll never be absolutely right. But at the same time, I can be relatively wrong. And so that relativity is a degree. And how can you use relative thinking and not absolutely thinking? Absolute thinking is separation of yin and yang. Nothing exists. Nothing exists. Nothing is 100% one way or the other. So you have to know, okay, to find where the middle is. And that's what it means, the middle. So China traditionally is the middle country because they're focusing on the middle. And how did that middle come about? And what does middle signify? And so we'll talk about that. And it's about formation, transformation, and transition. So we'll talk about all of those components of Ba Gua and prediction. To predict something, and how do you predict? In a way, in Asian culture, Chinese culture, nowadays, most people use Ba Gua for fortune telling. Fortune telling, sometimes accurate, sometimes it's not. And the inaccuracy comes from the feeling. Comes from the feeling. And we're going to get into a little more detail later on what that is. And it's just using the word prediction or fortune telling. There's a component, the premonition. Premonition, there's a feeling involved. And so once the feeling is involved, you're going to use a feeling to gauge it, to approve or disapprove. And using that as a way to understand not only the prediction, but to see if it's accurate or not. And once you know you have a prediction, then you can prepare for it. You can prepare for it. And it's what I call living in the solution. And it's interesting. When you're driving, and there's a turn coming up, and you can do that experiment with it when you say, well, actually, don't do it. Don't do that experiment. Do you turn before the turn or do you turn after the turn? Think about it. If you turn after the turn, it's already too late. In life, you're already doing things in preparation for where you're going into. So you're already making the turn before you go into the turn, meaning you're correcting the problems before the problem occurs. If you're turning after the turn, well, you're already out of bounds. And at that point, you have to severely do the correction. And do you want to go through life with that correction constantly? That's a pendulum. You end up swinging one side and then the other side, and then one side and then the other side. You don't get very far. You don't get very far. And so you have to prepare yourself for what's coming. So Ba Gua allows me to understand what is coming. And after this class, you're going to have some degree of understanding on how to make that prediction. But more importantly, with the prediction, you got to have that premonition with the feeling. Because that prediction may apply true for one person, but not the other one. And so depending on where they are. And then the continuation is a cycle. So Ba Gua is a cycle. It's a continuation of life. And we'll talk about how that applies to life. So the foundation of Chinese civilization in the Orient, including Japan, Korea, if you look at Korean flag, has 4 Gua on there, right? You have water, you have fire, you have heaven, you have earth. Korean flag has that in the middle, the Taiji, or their interpretation of the Taiji in the middle, that becomes their flag. And Japan also, they follow it very closely. If you look at Japan, it's a sun. Their flag is a sun. And so they're focusing on the yang aspect of that sun. And so if you look at the culture, the Orient, how does that happen? And to talk about that, we're going to talk about value. What does that mean, value? Each society has a value system. And that's a system, that value system, what is it based on? a lot of times based on religion. So in the Western culture, mostly it's based on the biblical derived religion, whether it's Christianity, Catholics, or part of that, the Old Testament. If you look at the Old Testament, like the Jewish, they follow the same, and even the Quran, right? They all follow that lineage, and yes, they did separate, and they have different ideology and interpretation. And so religion is men's interpretation of the truth. I seek the truth. So I encourage you to seek the truth and not necessarily blindly follow a religion. I will make reference to Christianity. I'll make reference to different things, Buddhism. I'll make reference to all of that. And that's to help us make the connection. And so that's very important too, that you have that true understanding of that value system. So the value system in Eastern culture, in the Orient, came from the Ba Gua, came from the Yi Jing. And that Yi Jing, from the very beginning, if you read the Bible, there's a parallel in Genesis versus the creation in the Yi Jing. There is a parallel. Yi Jing does not necessarily negate the Bible, but actually it draws understanding to the Bible. And so for me, that's having that understanding is important. Yi Jing, what does that mean? How did it come about? And from the Yi Jing to Zhou Wen Wang, and then to Kongzi, Confucius, and even Lao Tzu. And they set the value system. That sets a value system for the society in the ancient Chinese culture. And from that ancient Chinese culture, that becomes the evolution of that culture. It is based on that. It's not based on religion. It's based on the understanding of the formation and the flow. And it's amazing. It's amazing. And we talked about with the relative versus absolute. Do you want to focus on the relative or the absolute? Do you want to be right? Or do you want to be righteous? So relative versus absolute is a degree of it. It's never the absolute on both sides. And in Western culture, a lot of time we like to stick on one side. Well, when you're driving, as a good example, when you're driving, you're going down a road, you have two lines. Where is the safest? It's always in the middle. But in order to determine where the middle is, you have to see both sides. If you don't see both sides, you will not know where the middle is. Imagine you don't see one line. What are you going to do? You're going to straddle around that line. And that's what you're going to do. You'll never see the other side. So make sure you see both sides to figure out where the middle is, because in the middle is the safest. And you have to be flexible of the line. If a semi is coming to my lane, I'm going to give him the space. I'm going to give him the space. It's bigger. And so you have to figure out where the safety is. And so it's not about absolute, but it's about relative. And that's a major difference in the thinking of the Asian culture. They think in terms of relative. Western culture tend to think in terms of absolute. And you'll see that in Christianity. Why Christianity? Because remember Christian crusades. If you don't believe, I'm gonna kill you. And there's nowhere in the Bible that talks about that. And so it's important to understand, okay, it's not about that absolute, the right or wrong, but rather it's about the righteousness. It's knowing when to bend, when to give, when to take. It's like a tree. If a tree is not flexible, it will be uprooted when the storm comes. But when a tree is flexible and it bends with the wind, that's a tree that's going to survive. And so learn to have that relative thinking and not that absolute thinking. And to understand the relative, you have to have that paradoxical thinking. Once you see the right, I'm going to ask where the left is. If I see right 3, I'm going to ask where the left 3 is. And that's gonna create my relative. And constantly having that relativity, because sometimes the road gets wider, sometimes it gets narrower. And when it's narrow, they just pave the road to our house. And they're squeezing a walking path and a bicycle path out of it. And that two line is really small. I can barely fit through as it gets closer to our house. And then there are times roads are wider. So for those who are in the United States, we have wider roads. You go to Canada, a little narrower. You go to Asia, even narrower. I think Europe is the same. They're narrower. And that's why a lot of time American cars, people won't buy it. It's too big. Too big. And so you have to know that relativity to figure out what that middle is. And the goal is for you to know the way, the path, the safe way, and the safe path, which is the best way and the best path for you. Because what's for you may not be for another person. And that is the flow. That is the flow. And the flow, does that mean change? You betcha. We'll talk about what that means. If there's no change, and what is change, right? And I say, I don't like the change, so then how can I define it instead of using the word change? It is ultimately is a flow, but it has to do with movement. So if I remember one time I was sitting at the red light, and of course I have my foot on the brake, and all of a sudden the car is moving forward, and then I jam on the brake. Well, I was already on the brake. It wasn't my car moving. We're on the hill, and the lane next to us, I guess it's a stick. The guy was rolling back, gave me the illusion that I'm moving forward. Was I moving? I wasn't moving, but I had the illusion of movement. So I want you to start thinking this word, and the word is movement. You have to learn how to move in this space to create a flow. If you're going at the speed of the surrounding, are you moving? No. It gives you an illusion that you're not moving. But you are. You are moving. You become the constant to the surrounding. And so that's the key point. It's about transformation. The flow is about transformation. So when everything is moving around you, you have to know how to move at the same rate, in the same direction. So if you're already in a good place, you want to flow at the same rate with the same direction. And that's important. That's a flow. A lot of times, if you look at water, and on top of water, a river, for example, and there's a leaf that's coming in, and then all of a sudden it catches that current and it's going around and around and around, and you can't get out. It's flowing, but it's stuck. Is it moving? It's moving, but it's stuck. It's going nowhere. It's going in a circle. So that synchronicity of the flow and the direction, just a slight shift that angle can push that leaf out. You can just put a fingers, not touching the leaf, but somewhere within the current, it can redirect it. And that leaf will go in a different direction and keep going. And so that flow is important. You have to understand the flow. And same thing, if everyone is on the same boat and you're rowing, all it takes one person going the wrong direction at a different rate, and you're gonna end up in a circle. And so if you have a team in your clinic, you want to make sure you're going at the same rate, at the same speed, and towards the same direction. And so in the beginning, that's where Ba Gua begins. And the meaning of Ba Gua, it means Ba, sometimes in the modern pronunciation, especially Cantonese, is very similar to the growth, or I like to use the word becoming better rather than growth. It's becoming, and it's also the flow. And so that's what 8 signifies. And in Chinese, we like that word 8. And so you do want to grow. Grow is a continual process. And we're not talking about the knowledge, and definitely we're not talking about this way or this way. At the epiphyseal plate closes, this is not happening. Actually, going the other way, going the opposite direction. And so the true growth is it of the physical? Not necessarily, but actually what we're talking about is your spiritual growth and how you can use who you are as the spirit and why you're in this body to use the body to function. And in Christianity, they call it the temple of God. Your body is a temple of God because it houses your spirit. And if we have a chance in the future, we get a different spirits within the body. So Gua, some people translate it as a hexagram, meaning 6 lines. Well, actually, it's not really 6 lines. It's a stack of 3 lines, meaning it's a double of trigram. And we'll get into that, how each line means and how do they stack them. Today's focus on Ba Gua on the 8, not on the 64. When you stack them, you get 64. And that 64 correlates with in DNA or genetic, the codons. You have 64 codons as well. So the formation, so the Gua, let's look at the word. Sometimes they translate it as formation or prediction or certainty. And I like the word certainty for a reason rather than prediction. Certainty is you moving with the movement to stay in the middle. You're moving with the movement to stay in the middle. So Ba Gua, you have the earth. That's one of the radicals. And then you have another. So they're stacked. And that's why the Gua over time evolves into the hexagram. And then you have this radical. And that radical means to predict or premonition, as we talked about earlier. A prediction versus premonition is very different. There are times I want to put in a needle in a location because based on my experience, that's where I'm going to go. But my heart tells me, no, go here instead. Where did that come from? That came from the premonition. Premonition is a feeling towards it. And to have feeling towards it, you have to stay in a place of peace. Without the peace, that needle that you put in initially, and I've done it, it doesn't work. Meaning, especially for acute pain, the pain's still there. But the premonition allows me to go to the right place. Okay, flow. 不通则通, the entire Chinese medicine hinges on that word flow. No flow, therefore pain. So pain is an indicator of not flowing. Not flowing what? Whatever it is. Can it be neurological? Yes. Can it be blood vessel? Yes. Can it be energetic? Yes. Can it be lymphatic? Yes. Can be all of the above. And when you're stuck and you can't get anywhere, you're like that leaf going around and around and around over and over again. And then you get nowhere. And so those are the different radicals within the word tong, meaning flow. And in that flow is the path, is the function, and how you use that function. It has to do with movement. And tong, actually, the radical, this radical, it signifies disease. So even the word disease has this radical. That means disease. And so tong means pain. So anytime you see this, it has to do with something pertains to disease. And so 不通则痛, we're using the symptoms, the pain, the discomfort, the dis-ease to figure out, okay, where it's not flowing. And once you know where it's not flowing, then you can open up the flow and allow it to flow. Okay, we're going to learn a lot of Chinese characters. today. And the directional flow, and remember this, I use this all the time. As soon as my direction is incorrect, then you're stuck. So 3-directional flow has to be outward. Any thinking, any doing that you do has to be outward, outward to a heart. And not only outward to the heart, but also upward of the value of the heart. That's the second direction. You can be outward to a heart and then take away from the heart, meaning downward. And then third is forward in time. Forward in time. And Ba Gua allows me not only to understand, but to apply it, to stay in that. Okay, I think I was signaled to have a break. And we'll come back to the flow and we'll get into, 11, okay. 5 more minutes and we'll have 10 minutes break. And so those 3 directions, I use that to gauge every thinking that I have. If my thinking does not pertain to those 3, then at that point, Paul is introduced, it's judgment. And once judgment is introduced, premonition doesn't occur. Premonition is gone. The feeling is gone. A feeling of peace is gone. And so you want to make sure that those 3 directions are maintained at all times. Every day I wake up, I already know the hearts I'm going to touch because I already have a focus on the hearts. I don't schedule events. I stopped scheduling events a long time ago, whether it's the clinic or my personal events. I schedule hearts. I schedule hearts. Everywhere I go, I'm going to touch hearts. And of course, touch a heart that is open. You offer to open the heart. And once the heart is open, giving is easy. And for those, and for Christian, a lot of Christians, oh, but Christ gave to everybody. He didn't. He offered to everybody. He did not give to everybody. When he was on the cross, there were 2 next to him, 2 thieves. He only gave to the one whose heart is open. So learn to offer and learn to give. You only give to the heart that is open. You don't want to pour water into a glass with the lid on. If you do that, you're going to make a mess. So same thing with patients. The initial visit, when I'm talking to them, I'm offering. I'm not giving yet. Even with the treatment, it's still an offering. And once the heart is open, that healing begins. Because some people, they have unrealistic expectation. I'm leaving for Hawaii this weekend. And I got 3 days. Fix me. Have you had a patient like that? I have. And for them, are they the ones that is realistic? No. Are they going to get healing? No. If something acute, okay. But if something that's chronic and you have a lot of underlying structural damage, there's no way that you can do it in 3 days. And I'll tell them, we'll do the best that we can. I don't like to try, so I don't use the word try. So we'll do the best that we can to help you alleviate the pain so you can have a better trip when you go to Hawaii. And that's realistic. And whether they understand or not understand it, they're the ones who decide. If the heart is not open, it's better that we're not treating it. But if heart is open, I'm 100% in. And I'll give them 100%. I'll go to the hospital and visit them. And there are times I can go to their house and treat them. When you care, you truly care. And I think that's a good stopping point. Any questions? Not yet? Okay. We'll take 10 minutes and we'll come back 10 after.